Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. The story that Eva told you is absolutely right. So sitting in a comfortable cinema seat around a year ago, I thought about to how many organizations roadmaps and road mapping process of creating roadmaps creates certain problems. And over the last year, I spent some time investigating how it looks in different organizations, also reading some public available materials about it. And I wanted to share with you today a story, which I hope that will inspire you to start road mapping like a pro. First interesting thing that I found was that some studies show that many product owners, program managers, groups responsible for product, so those people who usually create and maintain roadmaps, they actually do not show them, they hide them. One could ask, why the heck do they do it, right? Isn't it a roadmap something that we should, radiate and inform our organization, our partners about what we plan to do, what we would like to achieve? That's a very good question. And among some of the declarated reasons for why roadmaps are, let's just say, hidden or kept in secret are three repetitive things. First one is a fear of exposing confidential company material to competitors, market, or stuff like that. Well, I think it deserves probably a separate speech, and probably also not at this, but at some other conferences. This is for me dangerous because I hear it also when we talk about relationship to our partners, like our software provider or software house. And that's for me really strange because it's hard to do the right product if you don't see the map and everything basically surprise you coming just out of the corner. The second reason is probably something that you would expect to find here, which is building unrealistic expectations, right? So like we all are basically under the bias of anchoring. So once we see something, it basically wires into our brains and we would like to have it. So the third reason is probably very much similar and very much interconnected to it. So product owners are basically afraid of being chased for the scope and dates which are shown on the roadmaps. Okay, we may disagree, we may dislike it, but that's the reality, right? This is what these people who work with roadmaps, who create roadmaps, basically report as the reasons why the roadmaps are not available for everyone and not in the way that we would probably wish for. I also did some of my own studies, like how the roadmaps looks in different organizations. And I think the reasons that we just saw basically lead us to some kind of templates or patterns, or maybe you would agree anti-patterns in terms of like how roadmaps look like. So the first type of roadmap is the one that you just see. If you're now wondering, like if Radek haven't switched the slides, no, that's it. Because the type one is like non-existent roadmap. Yeah, so like we are so busy with reactionary, wishes and requests from so many stakeholders that it's simply that doesn't exist. Okay, that's just reality. Again, observations. Second type of roadmap is a roadmap which exists. So we're going to see something on the slide. It may look, well, even cool. There are some features, there are some epics, there are some maybe even outcomes that we would like to have. But if you closely look at the details, you see that it's a little bit outdated. So the now marker is like far beyond everything what we have planned. And we don't know, is it actually done or not? Many reasons, in many cases, the reason for it is like the person responsible for maintaining the roadmap is gone. So like in here, we see Carrie Produktowski. She's an inactive user in our Confluence. I mean, if you find a roadmap like this, it probably gives you some kind of feeling where we are with the roadmap. The third type of roadmap is probably the roadmap which looks like this or something similar. So something what I decided to call a wishful thinking. So like we would like to have more and more over time. And it doesn't really, if it all makes sense, it doesn't really, if we also understand to which category does it belong, to which strategic initiative does it support. Yeah, more is better. That's at least how it's perceived. Okay, we could say, some of these maps are actually nice looking because there's like lots of software as a service providers who provide road mapping software, and some of them call themselves agile. So like when I hear you have an agile roadmap, could you show it to me? Yeah, and usually organization says yes, yeah, you can have it. So I look at it and it looks like this. Okay, so first of all, it exists. That's good. It's not outdated. That's even better. It's not increasingly more demanding from the organization in the future. So is it good or is it bad? Unfortunately, if you pay closer attention to it, you will find like worrying details there, right? So like it says that, you know, the next release, number 1.3.7, happens on the 29th of April at precisely 16:37. Well, yes, of course, I'm exaggerating now. You won't find probably such timestamp there, unless you actually opt for, I don't know, launching a space probe at NASA. But even there, they are aware of things like weather and other things which may impact your release, your launch. So when I look at a roadmap like this, I'm thinking of the old bus stop timetable, and this is what I wanted to inspire you today. So let's just say enough of finger pointing, enough of jokes. Let's start digging into the topic of like what is the difference between a map and a timetable, because that's what probably could bring you to this presentation. That was what was written at the AgileByExample website, right? Okay, so when I mean the bus stop timetable, I mean something like this. This is exact copy of the old school bus stop timetable that you can find on a bus stop next to my place, the place that I'm now talking to you from. And it's very simple. So you can say, oh, exactly at 5 minutes and 35 minutes after a full hour, there's a bus going, right? And this is happening on the working days. And on non-working days over weekends, its frequency just one times an hour. Okay. What's on the side is also a list of the next bus stops. And there's also interesting information hidden there. So there are like numbers, and these numbers are values of like how long will it take to go with the bus to one of the following bus stops. Of course, these days, very often we have digital screens, but unfortunately, our roadmaps do not look like the digital screens showing real life data, but they look exactly like the old school bus stop timetable. And what's wrong with it? I mean, well, first of all, I will try to prove you that it's actually non-agile. So don't call a roadmap like this an agile roadmap. And I want to tell you about two interesting and very dangerous non-flexible characteristics of such timetables. So first one is assumption that the travel time between two bus stops is actually repeatable. And we know it's not, because I basically travel with this route with a car or with a bus, and I know that things happen. For example, traffic. Traffic influences the time that it takes us or a bus to go from one stop to another. The other interesting factor is, of course, weather. Something's like completely out of our control. And of course, weather increases the traffic, because when it's raining, everyone wants to jump on their safe and drive car and listen to their favorite podcast or streaming. So they don't want to spend time waiting at the bus stop. They increase the traffic. Of course, weather, for example, fog or slippery roads or and other things may cause some accidents. And you know what happens if there's an accident, even a small one, so even like a bumper-to-bumper collision? Well, it increases traffic. And if the traffic is heavier, well, more accidents happen. So we have a couple of feedback loops which are positively reinforcing here. And it's really hard to say what actually will be the time traveling from one stop to another. Unfortunately, the second flow of such roadmaps or timetables is basically a promise that there's predictable departure time or arrival time. So like if it's raining and you opt for, wait, you hope it's not going to be 15 minutes late because you may be standing in a pouring rain. And unfortunately, we promise our customers very often a precise time, and we simply could say in a parallel make them waiting in the rain. So you know that we are very much cautious about word commitment, because this promise is a kind of commitment, and we know that's not a very agile in its nature. Okay, so you could say that's how some of the roadmaps look like. So how could they look like differently? Well, remember that we are talking about roadmap. Yeah, here I highlight the word map. So I bet you've ever seen a map. And how does the real map look like? Well, map look like this. Yeah, and if you look at the map, what are the differences against the timetable that you have seen a moment ago? Well, first thing is that we have more than one way visualized how to reach the destination point, right? So we have one way, which is maybe good quality roads, but it's a big traffic jam there. And we have another route, which is maybe longer, maybe with theoretically the relatively poorer quality of road, but considering the traffic, we may go there faster. Okay. That's something relatively obvious. And of course, if we use digital maps like Google Maps or something like this, we usually receive some kind of forecast. So how long it could take to go from point A to point B. Because I bet that in most of the roadmaps that you have seen, there are some timestamps, there are some quarters, months, or actually precise release dates. Okay, what else is interesting difference between a timetable and I guess if you travel with a bus, you don't have a freedom where to stop. And for example, yeah, think about a coffee. I would like to have a coffee and I would like to stop. If my roadmap is actually a timetable and I have defined bus stops, I cannot do anything about my own or my customer wish for a coffee, cup of coffee. If we use map, we can actually find on the map interesting place. It could be a coffee place. It could be interesting, I don't know, old town to visit. And of course, we can learn or at least elaborate a little bit like what would be the impact of derailing from the initial selected road. Just like in here, we could say 6 more minutes, okay, plus 11, that's still shorter than 20. So maybe I will go with this unpaved road instead of, you know, jammed highway, and I will still make the most of my trip. The other thing is that there are other similarities. So, for example, if you use a map like this, I bet you sometimes use this amazing feature which allows you to select when do we want to leave or when do we want to reach our destination. Why is it so? Just because, like we spoke about the traffic, it's not like the travel time is equal at different points of day or working days or weekends. So if we select the travel in the afternoon, we know our values, but there's also a way that we could select some other time, for example, not 6 p.m., but 6 a.m. And at 6 a.m., these times are shorter. Now, if you pay attention to everything that I sell here hidden, one could say, nice try, Radek. So you're trying to inject your revolutionary Kanban ideas of having less traffic on the roads because then we can travel faster. Well, if you notice this, yeah, guilty as charged, you are right. Because if the road is empty, you can travel faster and you can travel probably also safer, even despite the speed. Okay, what else we see on the maps is that usually we also get ranges. So it doesn't say precisely 8 minutes, but very often it will tell us, oh, it's going to take you 6 to 8 minutes or 8 to 10 minutes. And this is something what I believe we should also reflect in our product roadmaps. So talking about precision is very often something that we are chased for, something what is expected from us. But this is basically fooling ourselves and fooling our customers. And reason behind it is like we very often do not, I would say, reflect on how many deadlines, fixed date, single points in time were actually kept. Well, the reality shows that not too many. Okay, so if we say traveling to a place which is 10 or 20 miles or kilometer away from you is not a big deal, because in the worst case scenario, you could even walk it in a straight line, you are right. So how about traveling longer distances? And the roadmaps usually show longer distances because they usually show quarters, if not years, of evolution of different products. So we could compare it to traveling between two different cities into different countries. Yeah, this is a span of hundreds of kilometers. If you plan a trip like this, you probably also need to think about things which are more technical. So like refueling your gas tank. Because the distance may be basically different. If again, you understand that one way is really heavy with the traffic, you may decide to go for a longer trip, but this longer trip may be in the end faster. The case is like, do we actually reflect like what is the level of our gas tank when we start our trip? Again, not many organizations do that, and not many organizations reflect it on the roadmaps. Another factor is like, how far away from now is the next gas station. But what's also interesting, technical stuff, it's not just like refueling the gas tank, but it's also, changing your engine, or maybe changing architecture, or maybe completely redesigning your system. And these things have impact on how far and how fast and with which way and with what fuel, money, or time consumption we can actually go. Okay, so I've been talking a lot about traveling, but because in COVID-19 pandemic time, traveling isn't easy or completely safe, maybe let's finish with talking about travels. I think that's why we have this conference today remotely. So how about pulling this all together and trying to design a little bit better map, which looks more like a backpacker's travel plan. So if you travel with your backpack, you know where you want to go, probably to a distant country, maybe to see some, old towns or museums, but you don't know exactly what's going to be interesting that you're going to discover over the course of your trip. In this case, I would say that a good roadmap and the road mapping exercise activity should be focused on sequences of features providing, first of all, experiences to our users or opportunities to our businesses. Because time, budget, and list of features will change. It will change for sure, and it will change eventually. Okay, knowing that, we should also think about optional things, because if you I don't know, travel to one city, you may discover from a local person that there's one more interesting thing to see and one more day to stay there to enjoy something that you haven't planned because you weren't aware of it before. We also may need to skip some of the things because, for example, there is like interesting museum, but the tickets are very expensive and we learn about it only once we are there. Well, it happens. So how about having a potential places that we would like to visit? And these places would be, well, everything that also Agile is about. So learning and experiment. So discovering things over the course of our trip. Okay, and what about time? Of course, business wants to know the time. And I would say it's quite natural because we all want to know some timestamps, some estimations or forecasts in time. And what's better is, of course, using ranges and probability. I know that it may not be easy, but we need to be aware how to explain this to business. It's not 0-1, it's not black and white situation that some things that we as change agents, scrum masters, product owners can actually not to talk about to business. We are, I would say, empowered to do it, and we should do it. Okay, what about timing? Well, multiple initiatives and features and epics in progress, they all cause delays. Just like a traffic jam, you travel slower, you travel more risky of having a bumper-to-bumper collision or even something serious to happen. So it's also good to know what is the right moment to start some initiative. And it doesn't always need to be the finish of the previous one. And what about the technicalities? Well, I know it may sound controversial that you wouldn't show technical things on the roadmap because it's a product roadmap in the end. But if we keep it hidden from people who decide on the order or sequence of the things, this is fooling ourselves and basically fooling them. If we want to basically reach something what is quarters or years ahead of us, we need to incorporate into our conversation things like changing oil or refueling the gas tank, which would probably all the things that you could call enablers or spikes or maintenance activities or evolution of your software and its architecture. Okay, so how this roadmap could finally look like, because I bet this is the reason why you're at this presentation. That's why I'm like, teasing you with travel references before we see it. Well, let's see. So there should be some line. We're going to talk in a moment if should be timeline, because I believe instead of timeline, we should have some line of outcomes, not output, outcomes. So what's going to change for the user of our application? What's going to change for our staff operating this app? Experiences. So what is not possible, what is not doable today is going to be possible for our users or our business in months or quarters from now. Very often, the same application, the same product is launched to different different market groups or different markets, meaning countries or regions. Okay, which user group do we focus in 2 quarters from now? Learning. So learning is a part of every trip. We say that traveling is a good for our educations, for opening ourselves, our minds to new horizons. That's what roadmap should also do. Communicate with ranges. So I know it's not easy with the tools, and I bet now there's a question coming to like, how do I do it in Jira? But it is possible to communicate ranges and also to visualize ranges. And visualizing ranges, so possible difference in the length of some activity, doesn't always need to be negative, that it's going to take this long or longer. It could also start earlier, or yes, in the end, also could finish earlier. This also depends of like how basically congested is, how intensive is traffic on our way. The next step is learning. So if your roadmap shows one initiative after another, and if you don't have time for feedback, for learning, for discoveries, if you don't have time because you assume that you totally control and you know what's going to be the outcome, well, good luck. I don't think it's going to work. And of course, some of you say like, yeah, it's all nice, but my business also wants dates. Yes, they want dates. Sometimes regulatory bodies want dates. For example, GDPR or PSD2 in banking were good examples. And these fixed dates is something that we should also work around. But let's ask for justification. What is a fixed date because we want it? What is a fixed date because we really, really need to have it on this date to operate our business? So putting maybe markers like this, it's not going to harm us unless you're not going to have only markers like this with exact dates. And as I said, please don't hide technology and architecture under some even horizon, right? It's not a black hole. It's not a black box. Everything that you need to do about refactoring, about lift and shift strategy to move your application to cloud, this is going to impact and this is consume the same time budget of the people who are working on the initiatives which you have above this line. And one more final suggestion. In many organizations these days, you have many ways of, let's just say, leveling strategic initiatives. OKRs are very popular. Sometimes it's Hoshinkanri, sometimes it's 4DX, different names, but basically for the same reason. We want to align our strategy and everything that we do with our product and everything what our teams do for the product. So if there is a tool like this, like OKRs in your organization, make sure that it's aligned, because if it's aligned with your strategy, then all these strategy initiatives in which all business owners and CTOs are very much interested in, they will enable your roadmap to become reality. They will pull your product in the same direction because, well, no product should be, I would say, contradictory to the company strategy. Okay, is that all? Well, if that wouldn't be enough, remember that it's road mapping. It's mapping, so it's activity, right? I very often see the roadmaps which are outdated because we look into them every quarter or something like this. Unfortunately, maintaining a roadmap like the one I showed you a moment ago, it's a lot of work. burden work, it's a helpful work. And basically, when do things happen that impact the roadmap? They happen every day. They happen at your daily, they happen at your sprint review, they happen at your Kanban SDR meeting, because all these things are small pieces of those big initiatives that you see on the roadmaps. So remember, you don't need to avoid time. You can just talk about ranges. You can talk about learnings and outcomes, which is much more better than the bus stop timetable. And it's unfortunately, or fortunately, because it can be enjoyable, a lot of continuous activity. It's road mapping. It's not about having a roadmap. So I hope it will inspire you to roadmap like a pro, and good luck, because it's a hell lot of challenges for you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Radek. I need to unmute myself, of course, again, it happened.
It happens. I'm on the mute is one of the phrases of the 2020.
It is, it is. If you have any questions to Radek, please write them down into Gather on the room chat. When you put them in the room chat, I can see and I can ask Radek. There are, thanks for you from many people right now. And I have a question, but first of all, I forgot to tell that Radek will be available during Ask the Expert session. Am I right?
Yes.
Yes. And additionally, you can use Slack channel dedicated for this talk. You can find it when you use +sign and you find Radek Orszewski and name of the talk. So you can put the question there and Radek will answer later on.
Yes.
I am right. But the good choice is to state it there in room chat in the Gather. I can't see any questions. So in the meantime, you said that road mapping is an activity. And you give us an example of using it during daily or, any regular events. But did you see or can you imagine a practice of showing roadmap to the wider range of people from the, I don't know, top executive, etc.? What's the possible, advantage of doing that?
Yeah, so I mean, first about opportunity to do it, I believe if organization is aware that showing and sharing the roadmap to wider audience is actually beneficial, they will always find a good opportunity to it. And I believe there's really almost impossible to over communicate the roadmap, right? So from all possible town halls to all possible business unit meetings, why do we talk about details which aren't related to roadmaps? Yeah, so I think we should find some good opportunity to do it. What's the benefit? Just like I said, in this case of keeping the roadmap away from the wider audience because we are afraid of the details are there. We should think about what are the consequences if we don't show the roadmap, right? So if people don't know that we have a technical initiative of lift and shift strategy coming in a half a year, or if we don't know that we want to enter a new market, which will require a lot of localization effort for our app. Again, we believe in the self-organization and the teams of adults who are hopefully well paid and well executed to do their job, educated to basically do their job, to execute their job well. And if we keep them in a fog, if we keep them in shadow and they don't know what's coming, they won't tell us, hey, it doesn't make sense, or hey, there's a better way to do it. Or just like in the parallel with the travel, hey, there's a nice cafeteria there. Why don't we stop and see what's interesting in the city? These could be business opportunities, right? So why don't we invest at least some time box, some spike, you would say the old way, into, let's just say, seeing what options are hidden there.
Thank you. We have a question from Adam. Adam described quite a complicated situation, many initiatives, many dependencies, etc., etc. And he asked, how do you map something like that, so many things, without bus stops?
Oh gosh, I mean, how do I don't know the context, right? So I will basically probably answer with like some superficial answer to your question, Adam. But like how bus stops are helpful to manage this situation, I cannot imagine, right? I believe that maintaining a roadmap, like I showed you a moment ago, is a lot of work. And if to every single point there is a timetable attached, it's a massive work. And questions like what kind of information these bus stops timetables actually provide us. Because I can imagine that I'm maybe a stakeholder interested in a given initiative, and I see my timetable. And if my timetable is like changing every, I don't know, 2 weeks or months, I basically probably stop looking at it because I know that the bus will be late anyway. So just sticking to it. I'll be happy to basically know more about your context and maybe talk about precise action as much as you can again show or expose the details.
Maybe during the Ask the Expert session, or maybe via Slack, it is possible.
Yes. Yeah.
And we have a question from Dominika. Dominika asks, how do you map something like that? Sorry, I missed this question. It was question about using something different like Jira or like tools, which really is a blockade rather than helping tool. Sorry, Dominika, I messed this up.
So good point. And this is really interesting because I also have reflection lately that, our companies, really rich companies sometimes spend a lot of time and money on, changing things which are strictly technical. So like, let's move from one cloud provider to another. Let's move from one framework to another. Let's move from this type of architecture to a different one, or change completely our technological stuff. But when we talk about like, how about we drop this infamous Jira? Oh, that's not doable. And I don't understand it. I know I'm like, joking now, but like, please explain me. Yeah, like we probably don't understand the cost of sticking to a tool which limits us. And I don't want to say about Jira only because we know there are many bad jokes about it, but it's just one of the examples. I would say sometimes it's just good to think about, I would say, in a non-standard way. So I believe like for last half a year in times of COVID, I have seen amazing maps done with Mural or Miro. I'm not paid by any of these companies, but we know that like lots of tools like this are used these days, where basically we have this digital history, but the freedom of doing this the way we would do it with a physical board or putting a roadmap on the wall, right? And all the things that you cannot do in Jira or a tool which has like a limited options can be actually done with a little bit of creativity and maintained in a tool like this. That's just one of the examples that I've seen.
Yeah, physical board could be tricky during the COVID times, but maybe virtual boards as well.
Yeah. You can version it, you can export it. It's absolutely okay. Yeah.
We have a question from Marcin. Do you think roadmap should be created only by product owner, or should be effort of the whole Scrum team?
Well, thank you for answering the question the right way. And I would say not only a Scrum team, right? Because I think the right example in the picture that I showed is like, product people may not be aware, and it's absolutely justified about the initiatives related to evolution of technology. So like refactoring, like moving to cloud, like changing architecture, right? And of course, everyone who do we think that may help us with it should be involved in it. That's why, hiding the roadmap isn't a good idea. And Scrum teams for sure, yes. If only Scrum teams, probably not, because we know that we have more and more complicated structures in bigger organizations. We have, solution architects or people like this. They all should participate in it, and they should show each side of the roadmap with a mirror, right? Okay, these are the outcomes we want to achieve, and these are the technical enablers that we need to do it. And then we have a meaningful conversation.
Thank you. And we have a question from Justyna. The question is, how detailed should the roadmap be? And it is near my question I prepared, because you were talking about obstacles, and it is so important to put them on the roadmap. Yes. So maybe you can combine answers for those two questions, if you please.
Well, I think it's like talking about, for example, risks, right? So like why roadmaps are usually things that we want, and they don't include things that we are afraid of or that we should afraid of in terms of risks, right? So we should show on the roadmap good things like outcomes, learnings, experiences that we want to provide to our users' application. To users of our application, but we should also show uncertainty and risks, and we can navigate, I would say, among these, just like we would travel, I don't know, around a traffic jam. If we see that this is not the way to go, then we should have a way around. And the obstacles are basically that yes, majority of business, if not 99.9%, is really chasing for dates. And the problem is that, I see very often roadmaps which are being outdated and their whole history is erased. So like, okay, we aim for this date and this date and this date, they are changed. So we present new dates and we completely forget and we remove the visualization of it that in the past we had different dates that we aimed for. If we do it, then like we could be like, okay, now it's this date and now it's fixed, right? Okay, this is the third or fourth iteration when you aim for delivery of it. And if it didn't happen on time last 3 or 4 days times, then it probably means that the next date is also under some risk or some uncertainty. Yes, I would say show also the history of roadmap, and this helps a lot.
Thank you. And last question, maybe it will be, evil question, especially for you.
Yes.
Because you are master of Kanban, and you said that the roadmap is kind of map. So we need so many ways to go to the goal, not only one. So when you are preparing this kind of roadmap with so many ways, isn't it a waste?
Oh, of course it is waste. Of course it is waste. And now I feel you refer to probably lean concepts, right? And we could say, well, yes, you are right. So first of all, if we talk about lean principles in knowledge work, we don't want to lean out all speculations, because you can lean out opportunities from your roadmap. So that's why how I would defend it. And of course, like, how much you plan ahead, for example, these optional things, is important that we do it in the right moment in time. That's why we do the road mapping, right? We don't do the roadmap with multiple options ahead, 2 years ahead, and we opt for every possible way. We discover information over the time, and that's why we require road mapping as activity, because we see, okay, this becomes at risk, this becomes not likely to achieve. What do we do instead, or what do we do out of our options? What is the next option that we should pull, considering that we have some capacity?
Yeah, capacity. Okay, unfortunately, we do not have time for, maybe the last one, because it's quite interesting. How many roadmaps do you recommend or have seen per company, per department, per product team, and any tips of aligning those roadmaps? This is the question from Miriam, and it will be the last one, sorry.
Okay. Well, I would say, again, it depends on what's the structure of your product. We remember that we talk about product roadmaps here. So probably if there is a product, it should have a roadmap. If we have multiple products, probably each of them deserves to have a roadmap. If there's any dependencies, interconnections between them, we should visualize them as well. I would say don't mix product roadmaps with strategic initiatives that you would see at the portfolio level of the company. But I would say don't go into too many details, because there's also known this diagram. You have a vision for a product, then you have a roadmap, then you have a product backlog, which could be upstream Kanban, and this is in between. Yeah.
Okay, Radek, thank you very much. That was a big pleasure to see you at least via electronic devices.
Likewise.
Yes, but I, of course, would like to see you, in person soon. Thank you very much. Thank you for listening to Radek.